The stars were torn open by fire. Above the scorched atmosphere of Virela 9, the void convulsed with streaks of plasma and burning debris, torn ribbons of dying frigates and vaporized satellites raining down in silence. The world's night, sky once filled with the amber glow of two moons, was now a kaleidoscope of ruin and flickering power signatures. The Delmari Imperium had arrived not to conquer, but to make a point. They were the apex predators of the void, and they wanted the humans to know it. Their flagship, the Kratel Marun, carved a shadow across the orbital plane, a massive, cathedral-like monolith of living obsidian wrapped in shimmering plasma sheaths. 6 kilometers long and bristling with energy-hardened spines, it was a fusion of brutalist aesthetics and ancient alien theology. Its hull was adorned with crimson, glyphs that pulsed in slow rhythms, an ancient language of victory, written in the bloodlines of civilizations long gone. From its underbelly hung gravity anchors the size of human cities, each capable of pulling ships into the hull, like prey dragged into a kraken's mouth. Inside the command spire, Commander Revzar stood like a statue cast in mercury. His elongated form was laced with gold-trimmed armor, more ceremonial than functional, designed to radiate dominance. His four eyes blinked asynchronously as he studied the holographic projections before him, real-time scans of Earth's outer defense fleet. Dull grey frigates, primitive ion drives, ballistic weaponry. The Delmari AI chorus, orbiting his throne in shimmering fractal patterns, offered no warnings, because there was nothing worth fearing. Terran technology, he muttered, his voice like vibrating glass. Crude, predictable, endearing, in the way that a child's toy weapon might be before it breaks. 2 human representatives had been invited aboard as a diplomatic gesture, though the invitation had the tone of a veiled taunt. Vera Drake, former naval engineer and now senior emissary for the Terran Alliance, kept her gaze on the tactical display. Marcus Thorne, colonel of Earth's orbital fleet and veteran of the Europa front, stood beside her with arms folded, his uniform still bearing the silver scorch mark from a rail burst in the war for Titan's moons. The Delmari thought this was a show of mercy, allowing the humans to see their greatest ships up close. But for Vera and Marcus it was reconnaissance, silent observation, and a test. You see before you the glory of a civilization unchallenged for 12,000 cycles, Revzar said, turning to them. We do not need to speak of battle. Terrans, we live it. Your fleets, they are quaint. Your AI is still bound by linear logic. You pilot ships with living crews. You deploy armor that can still melt at 1700 Fahrenheit. Admirable, but utterly irrelevant. Vera did not respond immediately. She tilted her head, scanning the central projection again, highlighting the formation of the Delmari fleet, the energy surges along their defensive arrays, the plasma lance distribution. It was magnificent, but predictable. Thorne noticed her eyes narrow ever so slightly. Revzar waited for awe, for capitulation. He received only silence. Then came the whisper, a tone shift, a ripple in space so subtle only the most advanced Delmari sensors registered it, followed by a pause, a breath. Out of the distant curtain of stars, something arrived. It didn't roar, it didn't flash, it unfolded. Reality peeled like skin around a wound as the Vindicator emerged from a quantum seam. The Delmari ships twitched, some involuntarily, adjusting thrusters, others tilting solar vanes as their guidance systems recalibrated. The AI chorus faltered for 3 milliseconds. Revzar felt it in his bones. The Vindicator dwarfed the enemy fleet, not in sheer size but in weight, not in length but in presence. A Terran dreadnought constructed in silence beneath Europa's ice crust, sealed away from even the Alliance's own data networks, no official launch records, no diplomatic briefings. A classified prototype spoken of in hushed tones by engineers who disappeared shortly after being reassigned. Its hull wasn't sleek. It was jagged, segmented, as though grown from some ancient leviathan. Coated in neutron-forged tungsten and magnetically stabilized under layered gravitic sheaths, it didn't reflect light, it absorbed it. Energy readings showed 0 thermal output, 0 propulsion wake, 0 weapons lock, and yet it stared, Revzar's command spire dimmed slightly, automated systems recalibrating in the presence of an anomalous mass. One of his lieutenants began to stammer, as the Delmari chorus murmured warning strings in frequencies that hadn't been heard since the extinction of the Threx Val. Species designation: unknown. Composition unknown. Threat assessment incomplete, Revzar hissed. Why is this vessel not logged in our predictive models? How is it cloaked without energy distortion? Vera smiled faintly, then turned to Marcus. You want to do the honors? Marcus activated his neural relay. Vindicator status report. A pause. Then a voice, mechanical yet organic, quiet yet colossal, rippled through the comms. Online. Observation protocol active. Awaiting target priority. The implication was deafening. This was no display, this was no bluff. Earth hadn't brought its biggest ship, it had brought one just to see if it needed the rest. Before the silence could deepen, Vera stepped forward. You showed us your gods of war, Commander. Very impressive. But we don't worship at those altars. We build machines that break them. Revzar stared, and for the first time in 17 cycles, he felt it. That strange, tightening sensation alien races struggled to describe. Dread. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to StarBound's HFY for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. Out there in the dark, the Vindicator waited, and Earth's message was crystal clear. We're not here to be impressed. We're here to end the myth of your invincibility. Revzar stood motionless, his eyes locked onto the looming shape of the Vindicator, still barely visible in the vast expanse of the galaxy. His thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and unease, an emotion alien to the Delmari. He had never been challenged in such a way before. His mind raced as his four eyes scanned the silent bulk of the Terran ship. It was as though a living force was watching him from within the void itself, waiting for him to make the next move. He had expected a show of force. The Terrans, so long confined to their primitive rock of a planet, had surely brought their best, hadn't they? But this was not a mere challenge. This was a statement. And for the first time in his many cycles, Revzar found himself doubting everything he had known about the Terrans. The Vindicator hovered like an iceberg in the empty sea of space, an enigma wrapped in technological mystery. Its energy signature was completely off the grid, unlike anything the Delmari had encountered. Where the Imperium's ships flared like supernovae, bright and terrifying in their power, the Vindicator was a quiet void, its energy consumption so low that it couldn't be detected by conventional methods. To all intents and purposes, it should not have existed. But here it was, staring back at him with a force more imposing than any Delmari warship. Inside the command spire, Vera Drake turned to Marcus Thorne, her face expressionless. The tension in the room was palpable, an oppressive weight pressing down on them. For a fleeting moment, even Marcus, a veteran of countless battles, felt the gravity of the situation. The silence stretched on, filling the expanse of the bridge. With a quiet unease, "We've got a serious problem," Marcus said finally, his voice a low growl. "That ship isn't on any of our databases. Not a single one of our intelligence assets picked up on it." Vera didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied the Vindicator with a calculating gaze, her fingers hovering just above the holopad in front of her. Despite the situation's dire nature, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here than just a technological challenge. There was something alive about the ship, something almost intentional. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol. A representation of the Terrans' refusal to bow to the established order of the galaxy. The Vindicator had been created to be a perfect predator, a hunter born from the cutting edge of human ingenuity, but its true strength lay in something more intangible, its purpose. Vera had seen it before in the faces of soldiers, an unwavering belief that they were fighting for something more than victory, something that transcended the battlefield. The Vindicator embodied that very same belief, an unyielding will to fight against the odds. On the other side of the bridge, Revzar's lieutenants began to murmur, speaking in hushed tones to one another as the AI chorus processed the data, attempting to understand the nature of this new threat. Revzar turned his attention to them, his voice sharp. "Why are we still here?" he demanded. "Do you not see the situation we're in? This ship has no known origin. Its technology defies our understanding. It could be a weapon capable of wiping out our fleet. Yet you stand there like children." His voice echoed in the command spire, full of frustration, anger, and fear, a rare mix of emotions for the commander. One of the lieutenants, a younger officer with a sleek silver and black exosuit, hesitated before responding. "Commander, we've never encountered anything like this before. Our scans show the ship's energy signature is completely irregular. It's as though it's powered by something." "Don't speak to me in riddles," Revzar snapped. "What are we looking at?" The lieutenant swallowed hard before continuing. "We believe it's using a quantum energy modulation system. The way it cloaks its energy emissions is unlike anything we've seen. It could be drawing power directly from the fabric of space itself, folding the quantum fields in on themselves." A cold shiver ran down Vera's spine. Quantum energy modulation was a theoretical concept, something humanity had only dreamt of achieving, never fully grasping. And yet here it was in the hands of the Terrans. She exchanged a glance with Marcus, who was still staring at the Vindicator. His lips were pressed into a thin line and his knuckles whitened around the edge of the holo display. "Impossible," he muttered, barely audible. "They couldn't have—" But Vera's mind was already racing ahead, her thoughts tumbling over one another like a cascade of waves crashing against the shore. "That's the key, Marcus. That ship, this Vindicator, it's not just a weapon, it's a signal, a declaration." Marcus furrowed his brow, his gaze flickering from the Vindicator to Vera. "A declaration!" "Yes," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt in her chest. "The Terrans are making a statement here, and it's not just about technology. It's about power, about what they're willing to do, what they're capable of. And it's not just us they're challenging, Marcus. It's the entire galaxy." The weight of her words hung in the air, a sobering thought that sank deep into their bones. The Delmari weren't just fighting to protect their superiority. They were fighting to protect a way of life that had stood unchallenged for millennia. And now, with this single ship, the Terrans had thrown that into question. Revzar's voice cut through the tense silence, his tone venomous. "Prepare the fleet. We will not allow these Terran interlopers to taint our legacy. They will submit, or they will perish." The AI chorus responded in perfect unison, sending a surge of energy to the fleet's weapon systems. Thousands of ships, massive and imposing, shuddered to life as they prepared to bring their full power to bear. The Kratel Maroon shifted slightly in its orbit, and a distant, ominous hum filled the air as its plasma cannons began to charge. But as the fleet began to align itself, one question remained, echoing in the minds of all who witnessed the unfolding. Confrontation. Could the Delmari really defeat something they didn't understand? As the hum of the charging weapons grew louder, the Vindicator remained silent. A dark monolith suspended in the blackness of space, seemingly unfazed by the impending onslaught. It was as if it were waiting for them to make the first move. Predator, daring its prey to strike. And that's when the truth hit them. The Vindicator wasn't afraid of them. They were the prey. The Delmari fleet was an awe-inspiring sight, each warship an unrelenting fortress of weaponized might. Tens of thousands of ships, all gleaming in the deep void of space, their engines glowing with a fiery intensity that promised destruction. The star cruisers and dreadnoughts formed an imposing formation, their hulls reinforced with layers of alloy and energy shields that could withstand the fiercest of impacts. With their energy fields flickering ominously, the fleet seemed to pulsate with the rhythm of an ancient war drum, each ship a part of a greater symphony of death. And yet, the Vindicator stood unmoving, an absolute silence wrapped around it. It was an anomaly in the vast sea of weapons and warships, calm and still, a stark contrast to the raw, terrifying power of the Delmari. There was something almost serene about its presence, like a wolf in a sea of roaring lions. Revzar's eyes burned with a mix of rage and disbelief. He watched as his fleet advanced, preparing to unleash the full power of the Delmari war machine. But the calmness of the Terran ship only intensified his confusion. Was it truly so naive to think it could face them down? Was this ship somehow unaware of the fate awaiting it? Or was it calculating something far more sinister? "We're in position, Commander," came the voice of a subordinate, interrupting his spiraling thoughts. Revzar nodded, his 4 eyes scanning the Vindicator with increasing disdain. "Unleash everything we have," he ordered, his voice colder than the void itself. "Engage at maximum power." Without hesitation, the Delmari fleet released a massive barrage of energy weapons, targeting the Vindicator in an overwhelming wave. Plasma bolts, energy beams, and gravity warheads shot through the vacuum of space, their destructive force sending ripples across the stars. It was a coordinated strike that had decimated entire fleets in the past, a lethal, unrelenting assault. But the Vindicator didn't move. It didn't even flinch. Instead, the attacks began to bend and twist, as if the very fabric of space itself was reshaping around the Terran ship. The plasma bolts turned into shimmering arcs of light, twisting away from their intended targets. The energy beams, previously dead-on, were diverted by some unseen force. It was as though the Vindicator wasn't simply resisting the attack, it was rewriting the laws of physics itself. The Delmari officers on the command spire gasped in disbelief as they watched the catastrophic shift unfold before their eyes. What's happening?" one of the lieutenants stammered, his voice tinged with panic. Vera's heart skipped a beat. She had witnessed advanced technologies before, many of them beyond humanity's current understanding. But this was different. The Vindicator wasn't just enduring the barrage, it was absorbing it. The plasma energy seemed to evaporate into the very space around the ship, reconfiguring itself into some kind of neutralized field. The Terran ship, like a master illusionist, bent the very light and energy around it, distorting the weapon's trajectories as though they were nothing more than sparks dancing in the wind. "How is this possible?" Marcus whispered in disbelief, his face pale. It's rewriting the laws of space-time." Vera clenched her fists, her mind racing. Quantum energy modulation, yes. She had suspected that was what had been happening. But now she realized that it was not just about manipulating energy. It was about warping the very fabric of space-time itself. The Vindicator wasn't just using advanced technology, it was bending reality to its will. Revzar stood motionless, his confidence beginning to wane. His fleet's best efforts had been completely rendered useless. The Delmari had invested millennia in their weapons. Each ship was a marvel of engineering designed to dominate anything that dared oppose them. And yet, here was this Terran ship, alone and silent, deflecting their might like it was a child batting away a toy. "Commander," one of the lieutenants said, his voice shaking, "all attempts to penetrate the Vindicator's shields have failed. We can't even get close. It's absorbing the energy." Revzar's eyes widened, his voice low and trembling with the first taste of doubt. "What do you mean? You said we had the advantage. We were supposed to be invincible." It's beyond us, Commander," the lieutenant muttered, unable to hide his fear. "Nothing we have can penetrate its defenses. The energy, it's being neutralized before it reaches the ship." A tense silence descended across the bridge. The realization hit harder than any weapon. This was no ordinary adversary. This was a paradigm shift in warfare. The Terrans had created a ship that could absorb and neutralize an assault of unimaginable power, rendering even the most devastating of Delmari weapons utterly useless. For a brief moment, Revzar's mind wandered to the implications of what was unfolding. The Terrans had come from nowhere, with technology that defied logic and surpassed anything the Delmari had ever conceived. Their starships were crude in comparison to the sleek elegance of Delmari vessels. But now, as the Vindicator stood unmoved, in the face of their destruction it was clear the Terrans had created something better, and they had done it with the audacity of beings who had nothing to lose. But the Delmari could not afford to lose. They had 1,000 generations of pride and dominance to defend. "We will crush them," Revzar muttered under his breath, his voice low but filled with a grim determination. "We will crush them. But as the words left his lips, something unexpected happened. The Vindicator, in the silence of space, beneath the shadow of the Delmari fleet, began to shift. It seemed to respond not just to the threat before it, but to the tension of the entire galaxy. Slowly, like a predator waking from slumber, the ship's sleek form began to grow more defined in the darkness. The energy around it began to warp, pulse and thrash, its shields flaring with a supernatural glow. And then, with no warning, the Vindicator released its first offensive move. A single, piercing beam of light shot out from its core, faster than anything Revzar had ever seen. The beam wasn't just a simple weapon. It was a concentrated burst of raw energy, its power capable of splitting the very atoms of matter. It surged through space, a streak of blinding light, and slammed into the nearest Delmari warship. The result was instantaneous and catastrophic. The ship exploded in a flash of light, its massive hull disintegrating in an instant, scattering fragments across space. The Delmari officers on the command spire screamed in horror as the magnitude of the attack became clear. The power of the beam was unlike anything they had encountered, and it was just the beginning. In that single moment, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted once again. The Delmari fleet, once so sure of its dominance, began to break apart like a ship caught in a maelstrom. The first explosion had been a statement, a singular flash of destruction that rattled the very core of the invincible force. But it was only the beginning. The Vindicator had awakened, and its fury was unrelenting. As the beam of light tore through the Delmari warship, the space around it seemed to distort. The energy released from the Vindicator was so concentrated that it caused ripples through space-time, distorting the fabric of reality itself. The surrounding stars flickered in and out of view, their light bending in unnatural arcs. The once immense Delmari fleet seemed small in comparison to the staggering power now radiating from the human ship. The blast sent shockwaves through the void, rippling across the battlefield. Delmari ships shuddered, their hulls groaning in protest as they reeled from the impact. The detonation sent debris hurtling into space like shrapnel from a shattered world. In an instant, the first ship was gone, a mere speck of dust among the stars. The Delmari were left staring at the void where their pride had once stood, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. "How is this possible?" Revzar's voice, once a commanding roar, now trembled with disbelief. He had watched their technology obliterate entire civilizations, world systems and fleets, yet now his own fleet was being torn apart by something so fundamentally alien that it defied all comprehension. The Vindicator was now fully engaged, its sleek silhouette cutting through the darkness with cold precision. Its weapons, once thought unimaginable, were proving far more devastating than the Delmari had prepared for. The ship wasn't just defending, it was attacking, adapting and evolving its tactics as it went. The Delmari's weapons, so carefully crafted over millennia, seemed crude in comparison to the Vindicator's technological sophistication. Another pulse of energy erupted from the Vindicator, this time tearing through the hull of a second Delmari ship. The blast was so intense that it seemed to cause a ripple effect, a chain reaction that shattered the ship from the inside out. The energy didn't just burn through the outer shell, it peeled back the layers of metal, atom by atom, until the ship was reduced to nothing but drifting fragments. The vacuum of space claimed the remains, and the Delmari were left with only the echo of their devastation. "Impossible," muttered one of the Delmari officers. "They're not using conventional weaponry. It's like they're manipulating energy itself." Vera's eyes narrowed as she watched the Vindicator operate. The Terran ship was not just engaging in traditional space combat, it was hacking the very nature of energy. It absorbed their attacks, reoriented them, and fired back with even greater ferocity. She could feel the hum of the ship's systems resonating through the console, and for the first time, the realization hit her fully. The Terrans had evolved beyond the need for conventional weapons. They weren't using bombs or bullets, they were beating them with a kind of logic and intelligence that transcended the very concept of warfare, as the Delmari understood it. The Delmari were fighters. They were hunters, conquerors, and warlords of the stars. But they were also bound by the laws of physics and time, and in that moment, those laws were being bent, rewritten by the Vindicator's unrelenting force. Revzar clenched his fists, his mind racing. The Vindicator wasn't simply absorbing their attacks, it was learning from them. Each strike, each encounter was feeding it new data, new tactics, making it stronger with every move. The more the Delmari pressed forward, the more the ship adapted, countering their every move with an eerie precision. "They're evolving faster than we can react," Revzar said quietly, almost to himself, as the fleet's coordination began to break down. This isn't just a battle, this is a war of evolution. It wasn't just a metaphor. The Vindicator was adapting in real time, developing countermeasures as fast as the Delmari could unleash their weapons. Every attempt to break its shields was met with failure. Every strike only seemed to make the Vindicator more dangerous. In a matter of minutes, the once formidable Delmari fleet had been reduced to chaos. Ships that had been designed to withstand the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy were now vulnerable, torn apart by a force that wasn't even using traditional weaponry. It was using something far more dangerous: intelligence. The Delmari might have been the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known, but the Vindicator was showing them that the true measure of power wasn't just in how many ships you had or how much firepower you could wield. It was in how quickly you could adapt and outsmart your enemy. As the battle raged on, Revzar's heart sank further. His ships, each one a titan of engineering, were falling one by one. The Vindicator had decimated their numbers with ease, dismantling their defensive tactics as if they were nothing more than paper constructs. He had underestimated the Terrans. Worse, he had underestimated humanity itself. He had seen the humans, before primitive, scattered, and disorganized. But now, in the cold depths of space, facing the wrath of their most advanced creation, he realized the terrifying truth. Humanity was not just surviving the galaxy, they were rewriting it. "Retreat," Revzar said, the word bitter on his tongue. It was not a command he had ever given lightly. To retreat in the face of the enemy was a blow to his very pride, to the pride of the Delmari species, but it was the only choice left. Retreat to the homeworld. Prepare for the next phase of our strategy. We cannot afford another engagement like this. As his fleet turned and fled into the depths of space, leaving the wreckage of their comrades behind, Vera stood silently at the command console of the Vindicator, her thoughts heavy with what had just transpired. The Delmari might have retreated for now, but they would not forget what had happened here today. They had witnessed something truly alien, something they could not defeat with sheer might. And it was clear, humanity had just begun to show the galaxy what it was capable of. The Delmari retreat was not a victory, it was a warning, and it echoed through the universe like the cry of a dying star. As their fleet vanished into the cosmic shadows, leaving nothing but wreckage and charred debris in their wake, the humans aboard the Vindicator stood at the precipice of something far greater than anyone had anticipated. Captain Dalen's fingers hovered over the console, the hum of the ship's systems resonating beneath his skin. The tension in the air was palpable, a mix of disbelief and awe. They had done it. They had fought back a force considered invincible, a force that had crushed empires, wiped out species, and shattered the hopes of countless civilizations. And, yet against all odds, humanity had stood firm. The Delmari had thought them weak, primitives, but they had learned too late that humanity was a force unlike any other. "Report," Captain Dalen's voice cut through the silence, the weight of the moment pressing on him like a storm. Vera's eyes met his, her expression unreadable. For the first time since the battle began, there was a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. "We're not in the clear yet, Captain," she replied, her voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. "The Delmari may have retreated, but this isn't over. They're already calling for reinforcements. We've only just scratched the surface of their capabilities." Dalen nodded slowly, his mind racing. The victory felt hollow, like a fleeting dream. The Vindicator had proven itself, a weapon of unimaginable power, but that was just one ship, one human creation. And the Delmari? They were only the beginning. Then we prepare, Darlin said, his voice firm. We take what we've learned today and we make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. It was a sobering thought. The Vindicator might have crushed the Delmari fleet, but it had also exposed the glaring truth. The galaxy was a battlefield, and humanity was no longer an insignificant player, no longer a footnote in the records of the cosmos. They had just made their mark, and now the universe would know their name. Elsewhere, on the shattered remnants of a Delmari command vessel, Revzar seethed with rage. His species, once the undisputed masters of the galaxy, had been bested by a race they had considered nothing more than a nuisance, a species that, only decades ago, had been confined to a single, insignificant planet. Now they had proven their worth. And worse, they had adapted faster than the Delmari ever could. Revzar's thoughts were chaotic, a storm of disbelief and anger. He had spent his entire life honing his skills, leading campaigns, conquering worlds. And yet, in a single battle, the humans had shattered his empire's sense of invulnerability. He had underestimated them, but that would not happen again. The Delmari might have lost this battle, but they would not lose the war. They would return stronger, more deadly, more cunning, and they would bring humanity to its knees. They are not the only ones who can adapt, Revzar muttered, a dark promise in his voice. We will show them the true power of the Delmari. But it was not just Revzar's anger that boiled over. The entire Delmari Empire was in turmoil. The defeat at the hands of humanity was not something that could be swept under the rug. The galaxy had witnessed it. Every empire, every alien species watching from afar knew that the Vindicator was not a fluke. It was a testament to human ingenuity, to their ability to survive and thrive in the most extreme conditions. The galaxy was changing, and its balance of power was tipping. Vera stood at the helm of the Vindicator, staring out into the cold expanse of space. The battle had been won, but the war had only just begun. There was no victory song to celebrate, no moment to revel in their triumph. Not yet. The Delmari would regroup and soon others would come. They had made enemies today, but they had also made allies, if only in the form of respect. The universe now knew that humanity was not to be underestimated. What comes next? Vera? Dalen asked, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. The cold void stretched out before them, endless and unforgiving, but it was also full of possibility. Vera turned toward him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. We prepare, she said, echoing his earlier words, and we send a message to the galaxy, to anyone who dares think that we are easy prey. Captain Dalen's lips curved into a knowing smile. The humans had shown the universe their strength, but they had also shown their adaptability. They had been forged in the crucible of survival, and now they would survive against the greatest threats the universe had ever known. They were no longer the underdogs. They were the storm on the horizon, the force that would reshape the galaxy. The Vindicator drifted through the stars. The war was far from over. The Delmari would return, but so would others, species far more powerful, far more dangerous. But humanity was ready. The Vindicator was just the beginning, and this time, the galaxy would hear their name with both awe and terror. Humanity was no longer a distant star, no longer a footnote in the endless scroll of the cosmos. They were the spark that would set the universe on fire. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was at the center of it, and they would never again be looked down upon. If you enjoyed this tale of humanity's unexpected rise, make sure to like, share, and comment below. Your thoughts shape the future of these stories, and we want to hear from you. What do you think humanity's next move will be? Let us know.